Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Wednesday, November 16th, 2022, and last night at 9 p.m. Eastern Time in Mar-a-Lago, Florida, President Donald Trump announced that he would be running for the White House in the 2024 presidential election year. Donald Trump has officially launched his re-election bid and is running to be the third-time Republican nominee for president for this upcoming election against President Joe Biden. Donald Trump's announcement comes as a time in which the Republicans have failed in the 2022 midterm elections at winning in key and important battleground states, districts, and governorship, state legislative races, whatever it might be. Altogether, Donald Trump's influence on the Republican Party in 2022 has been largely regarded as negative, yet he decides to make an announcement at one of the worst points in time for his own standing within the Republican Party, but likely in an effort to win over Republican support. But as this article might indicate, Donald Trump's announcement seemingly did not shift mega donors back towards his camp. In fact, they have decided to move towards other Republicans such as Glenn Youngkin, Ron DeSantis, and many others that are floated as potential 2024 contenders. In fact, when you take a look at the betting markets, despite Donald Trump being the only one on this list who has announced that he would be running for president, he is still in second place to none other than Governor Ron DeSantis from the state of Florida. And given our Republican primary field, there are a lot of people that could consider running for president, but again, none other more powerful than Governor Ron DeSantis, who in recent polls has now overtaken Donald Trump following an abysmal election performance. What is this abysmal election performance, might you add? But you ask, while looking at the Senate map, Donald Trump propped up and propelled many Republicans to victory in their Republican primaries. What I mean by that is you have Dr. Oz in the state of Pennsylvania, Herschel Walker in the state of Georgia, Blake Masters in the state of Arizona, Adam Laxalt in the state of Nevada. These are all Republicans who lost their races for Senate in 2022 to Democrats. Democrats in Georgia are likely on track to win that election, especially following Donald Trump's announcement. But the race that was super important came down to the state of Pennsylvania, which decided the Senate majority in favor of the Democratic Party, flipping from the Republicans who currently held this seat. They actually held this seat since the 1950s. Democrats had been unable to win it for 70 years. They won Pennsylvania with John Fetterman against Dr. Oz in a large victory, significantly larger than President Biden's in the last election. And all of that had to do with a common denominator: President Donald Trump's influence and endorsement in the Republican primary. Now, with Donald Trump and his, in many ways, abysmal election performance, it doesn't just extend to what we think about on the Senate level, but also on the governor level. He endorsed and propelled Kari Lake to victory. She lost her race. He went against Brian Kemp, lost that primary. He propelled Paula Page in Maine, Tudor Dixon in Michigan, right? A lot of these candidates across many races, Doug Mastriano in Pennsylvania, Tim Michels in Wisconsin, that all of them, almost all of them at least, ended up losing their elections to their Democratic counterparts, despite, quite frankly, in many of these races, Democrats running a worse campaign compared to the GOP. But just looking at the failure on the Republican Party side, again, that common denominator comes down to President Donald Trump. And quite frankly, Republicans are abandoning him. When he made his endorsement or announcement last night, Republicans did not have an extremely positive reception to his announcement that he would be running for president. When you take a look at the endorsements that have rolled in for him, you aren't seeing as many as you saw back in 2020. You aren't seeing as many as you saw or expected to see in 2024. The largest names that we see: Andy Biggs, Madison Cawthorn, Matt Gaetz, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Jeff Van Drew, Elise Stefanik. These are all Republicans who we knew entirely would go to Donald Trump in terms of endorsing him for his re-election bid. Losing candidates like Adam Laxalt in the state of Nevada endorsed Donald Trump for re-election. But beyond that, you really don't see that much. You see the New York Young Republican Club, the California College Republicans. But extending beyond that, who else do you see? You don't see any United States senators on this list. You don't see any major Republicans on this list besides some of the outspoken crazies within that party. And I say that because I believe that to be true. But following Donald Trump's and the Republican Party's inability to win in the states that they needed to in the midterm election, Governor Ron DeSantis has proven to be a very big opponent to President Trump, despite Ron DeSantis not even announcing his bid for President of the United States yet. But what we find is that the endorsements have already started rolling in. Mick Mulvaney, who worked in the Trump White House, Cynthia Loomis, a Republican who voted to overturn the election results, went against Liz Cheney, was the representative before Liz Cheney, has already come out and endorsed Ron DeSantis. Sure, Ron DeSantis doesn't have everybody that he needs, but he has Meghan McCain, Rupert Murdoch. You have all of these top names within the Republican Party, and quite frankly, that Meghan McCain endorsement is quite powerful. It's a pushback and a revitalization of the Republican Party of before that the Republicans hope to see come in and ushered in under a party of Ron DeSantis. But Donald Trump's endorsement yesterday did not much in terms of propel his chances at victory in 2024. His campaign has really just been an expectation over the past 2 years, but truly put, it did not come at a good time for Donald Trump. The messaging here from the midterm elections, best written by the National Review, is that Republicans, Trump is your problem. Wake up. And that is entirely true. Looking at these results, Donald Trump did not help the Republican Party the way that he was supposed to. In fact, he set them up for failure. He propelled those Republicans to a place of political prominence within their party to a point where they were winning in extremely competitive primaries, but losing in extremely competitive generals. Mehmet Oz, Blake Masters, Herschel Walker, these are names you will remember. Carrie Lake, Tudor Dixon, these are names that will be played time and time again by the other side of the Republican Party, the never Trump side of the Republican Party that would undoubtedly back someone like Governor Ron DeSantis, that will tell us and remind us often about Donald Trump's failures in the 2022 midterm elections. And Republicans are not willing to fully fledged support him in this endeavor. Otherwise, you would have seen many Republicans join him in his announcement of his 2024 bid. But it is very clear from the lack of outspokenness by these Republicans, they should have endorsed him the day that he decided to run. They chose to stay silent due to the endorsement not only of just staying silent, but some of them actually endorsing potential opponents to Donald Trump, knowing that Donald Trump is running for president. Ron DeSantis' endorsements went up significantly following the Trump announcement. What you are finding is that a lot of the Republicans who were previously close to Trump are no longer willing to support him in 2024. You can see this in some of the statements that have been made by some pretty well-respected figures within the Republican Party. You have the newly, or I guess last year, elected Lieutenant Governor Winsome Sears from the state of Virginia, who supported Trump in both of his 2016 and 2020 bids, who said, quite frankly, Trump should not be the nominee in 2024. You find Dave Ball, the GOP chair in Pennsylvania's Washington County, who supported and defended Trump, saying, sometimes you have overstayed your welcome. You've got new people, new faces come, and you have to change with the time sometimes. It's not a complete and total pushback on the president, but it absolutely is an indication that even some of his core supporters are ready to move on. And you find that also in the presidential polling numbers. The Real Clear Politics average doesn't include new numbers that show Ron DeSantis in the lead, but you can still see here a significant reduction from the last time Morning Consult did a poll right before the midterms. In terms of the difference over just a 2-week period, Donald Trump went down about 2% in terms of his vote share amongst the electorate. Ron DeSantis went up 9 points. The margin here went from Trump plus 25 to Trump plus 14. As the former president of the United States, you should never be within reach for an opposition candidate. But the fact is, with Trump's announcement and Ron DeSantis not announcing, Ron DeSantis is still polling at 33%. I'm interested to see what the numbers will look like after we get some more and more data after Trump's announcement. Maybe it will solidify the GOP base, and I will be completely wrong about where we are right now. But even what I'm saying is true to an extent. Republicans are abandoning Trump, whether that be the elite and establishment Republicans, like the ones in Congress, like the ones on the governor level, like the ones who previously served in the White House. But there's the other side of Republicans, the voters in the primaries, who will ultimately make the decision as to who their nominee will be in 2024. But if the Politico Morning Consult poll showed anything, it's that there has been a reduction in Trump support. And if any of the other polls that we have as well show us anything, is that Governor Ron DeSantis has the ability to beat Trump. 2 new polls showing Ron DeSantis beating Trump head-to-head should terrify the former president. President Trump averaging less than 50% should terrify him as well, because he's in a position where he should have been dominating, but because of extremely poor election results, that is no longer the case. Donald Trump's announcement seemingly shook the nation when it came down to reporting on him running for a 3rd term, but it doesn't mean that Ron DeSantis is shaking with the country. He knows where he stands amongst the Republican Party, and quite frankly, it is quite positive. People like Ron DeSantis, and many of them prefer him over Donald Trump. For someone who started out in the early stages of the polls, not even polling above 3 points for months from November 2020 through March 2021, to come to a point where now you're defeating the former president is quite substantial. But we've been talking about this for a while. This was Donald Trump's nomination to lose, and the midterm elections look like they might actually solidify that loss. Voters, though, I will say, have a very short memory. By the time we actually vote and see a ballot cast in the first presidential primary on the Republican side, it will be over a year from now, which means a lot can change between now and January and February of 2024. But the question is, how much actually changes? Donald Trump as a candidate is returning us back to our age and day and age of 2020 and partially 2016. His campaign has pretty much overshadowed practically any other political news that we've seen this time, but it does not mean that he's for sure going to be the Republican nominee, because again, Republicans are not entirely willing to back him the way they did previously. When Donald Trump announced his bid in 2016, we saw many Republicans begrudgingly decide to support him through the primary. Very few members of Congress decided to jump onto his campaign because, number one, everybody thought that he was going to lose, so why go down with the sinking ship? But number two, he was someone that the Republican Party truly did not believe represented them. They thought it would be an era of Bush, Cruz, Rubio, Kasich, not Donald Trump. And even by the end of the primary, with uncontested races in California and large population centers, Donald Trump was still only able to garner about 45% of the vote. People forget that the majority of Republican primary voters did not want Donald Trump in the 2016 election. He won because of the convoluted rules and winner-take-all systems that allowed him to win in 3-way races by just a few percentage points and yet take 99 delegates from the state of South Carolina. That was the problem with the Republican primary system, but it's one that allowed Donald Trump to win his races, frankly, quite easily, and win the nomination despite nobody expecting him to do so. But Donald Trump's victory in the national Republican primary race in 2016 resulted in many Republicans jumping onto him as someone that they believed could usher in a new era of victory and usher in a new level of political opportunism and new regions of the country to expand into. The Rust Belt, the Sun Belt, into different parts, Maine's 2nd District, right? Other regions of the country that Republicans previously thought they should not tap into or would not have the ability to tap into. We do not see that level of enthusiasm for him now, but again, I'm seeing some similarities. Because I remember how Republicans were very hands-off in 2016. They went for other candidates. They endorsed the Ron DeSantis of 2016, which at that point in time probably was Rand Paul or Chris Christie, because they wanted to prevent an issue of Donald Trump being the nominee because they thought he was unelectable. But we might be in for an exact repeat of the 2016 election where Republicans also underestimate the power of one of their most influential figures in modern history. Donald Trump single-handedly has reshaped the vision, the composition, and the overall circumstances of the Republican Party. Their policy standpoints, their social issues, how they campaign, who they campaign for, the influence of a former president on political primaries. He has shaken up everything and anything about the Republican Party in his way, and Republicans expect him to be easily defeated? Fat chance, if you ask me. Donald Trump may be the poison for the Republican Party, as the National Review may indicate. Maybe it's time for Republicans to wake up and realize that he is the reason why they lost the 2022 midterms. But at the same time, will they care enough to actually vote against him on the national level? Real Clear Politics doesn't seem to think so. Politico and Morning Consult do not seem to think so. But YouGov does. And these polls are only going to start rolling in more and more and more, and they will paint a more accurate and more fascinating depiction of the 2024 race for the Republican presidential nomination. Donald Trump has lost a lot of support. These Republicans that were there for him 4 years ago or 2 years ago are not there for him now. But the question is, will they go out against him, or will they ultimately fall in line and endorse him as he inches closer and closer to winning the nomination, should a candidate like Ron DeSantis run or not run, depending on Donald Trump's performance? Altogether, Donald Trump winning in 2024 in the Republican primary is probably the likeliest outcome at this point from my own estimation, but that would probably decrease the Republican Party's chances at victory for the presidential election against President Biden. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below. Subscribe on the left if you haven't already, and check out the Instagram and Twitter. At the bottom left of the screen, there's also a Discord server for you to go ahead and join. On the screen, there's a video you can watch, and then a playlist for my 2022-24 election analysis videos. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all later today.